Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana, and we're here today with special guest, Dr. Joanna Massey, who's here to share with us her new book, Free Speech is Not a Free Pass to Spew Hate. So does free speech mean freedom from consequences? Well, today's guest is here to share with us just that. Dr. Joanna Massey has spent over 30 years in top leadership positions at CBS, Viacom, Lionsgate, and Discovery, where she ran corporate communications and advised CEOs and chairmen during high-stakes moments involving reputation, public trust, and organizational stability. With advanced degrees in business, psychology, and U.S. law, she brings a rare lens to the national conversation about communication, harm, and the First Amendment in the digital age. So welcome to the show, Dr. Joanna Massey.
Thank you, Marianne. It's delightful to be here. I appreciate the invitation.
Well, what an honor it is to have you here and to talk about your new book and the work that you do. What inspired you to write this book?
I feel like this could be a long answer, so I will try not to make it too much of a journey. But I have spent my career in communications for 30 years, corporate communications, publicly held companies. So I have a passion for how a knowledge of how people communicate and the impact that words have. In the middle of my career, thanks to being downsized during the recession of 2008, I ended up out of work for 6 years. And in that time, I was able to get a doctorate in psychology, which I use in business. So that PhD in psychology really informs my experience of how words impact, because it's not what you say, it's actually how you say it that creates problems. And then in my later career, as I'm in now, I sit on corporate boards. And I recently finished a graduate program at Cornell Law School. It's a master's in law, but it's for business executives. So it's not a full JD. I'm not going to take the bar, but it was a law degree for business executives. And we studied constitutional law first and foremost. And I fell in love with constitutional law, and especially with talking about the First Amendment, because the First Amendment in the Bill of Rights is where we protect free speech. And it just perfectly hit the trifecta of my experience and expertise, which is communications, psychology, and law. And that is when I decided that I would do a research, write a book and do research on how we can legislate hate speech in the United States, because it is widely believed that we are not allowed to legislate speech in the US. And that is absolutely, unequivocally not true.
Well, I think it's so good to make that distinction. And I'd love for you to dive into how does the First Amendment apply differently to government action versus private companies?
So, this is where free speech is grossly misunderstood, in my opinion. The First Amendment applies only to government. It protects us from the government squashing our speech, telling us what religion we have to practice, dictating our ethics, our morals, our religion, our speech, our behavior. It does not protect us from private companies. So, for example, the First Amendment is only about the government. So, a private company, if you work for a company, that company is allowed to tell you how you are expected to behave in its professional setting. And just to give you an example, you would not, as a doctor, walk into an operating room and without the proper attire. That is a behavior that you're expected to follow. If you were in the military, now that's a government, so this is not the best example, I'm realizing, but if you're in the military, there's etiquette and behavior that you must follow, orderly behavior. Similarly, in private companies, there are rules about how you can act and how you can behave towards your colleagues. things that you can say. And so as a result, this is speech that is an expression that is allowed to be not legislated, but is allowed to be dictated because you are in a private environment. It is not the government. And what most people don't realize or fail to think about is that social media is carried out on private platforms. They are publicly available, run by private companies. So a company like Meta, like Twitter X, like TikTok, these are private companies. And if they choose if they choose not to have their platform used in a way that is expounding hate speech or hateful things or dangerous ideas, that is absolutely legally and constitutionally in their right.
Just like going onto someone's private property, we still have to respect that private business aspect.
Exactly. And you bring up a very good point about private property, private business. One of the things that I think the Constitution's primary purpose that is lost on us right now, for the most part, is that it had two things that it was trying to accomplish, that our forefathers were trying to accomplish. The first was and foremost was to protect our freedoms from the government, right? To protect American freedoms from suppression by the government, right? No kings. Like they were trying to get freedom from the British monarchy, from monarch, from the rule of the king. And so they needed to protect our freedom from government. So that was their number one priority. Their second priority was to help protect our freedoms from each other. And one of the things that we really don't take into account today, and what I focus on in my book, which you so kindly mentioned in the beginning, "Free Speech is Not a Free Pass to Spew Hate," is that one of the things that some of our forefathers, Jefferson and Madison specifically, focused on was this idea of liberty with limits, meaning that your freedoms end where my begin. So if you are doing something or saying something that infringes or impinges on my freedom, my ability to live my life. Uh, we say liberty and justice for all, right? Freedom and fairness for all. If you are saying something, let's say I'm a group of people, I'm part of a group of people, maybe I'm immigrant or maybe it's a specific religion, and you are attacking those people. And as a result of your verbal attacks, your ongoing verbal assaults on me, on my group of people, I find myself unable to leave my home, unable to attend my religious services without being in danger of my life, unable to function in my job because I'm in danger. These are infringements on my freedoms. And as a result, you do not have a right to do that. So, the thing that people don't realize is since the beginning of this country, the 1700s, the late 1700s, the United States has legislated speech. We have always had laws that legislate speech. And yet today, the prevailing attitude is that we should not have those laws. And there's so much more I can go into about the law, but just to say briefly that the current laws that we have, the way that our court systems operate, is we operate on what's known as precedent, case precedent. And all of the precedent for harmful, hateful speech, all of those cases were done in the 1960s. There's one that was from the 1990s. But the thing that they all have in common is that they were created prior to the digital age. We don't have any case precedent that's currently used by our court system, including the Supreme Court, that was created in the digital era. And there is a big difference between how information spreads and the impact it has today versus the way it spread and impacted in the 1960s.
So, should there be safeguards, especially since everything is, we talk about the digital age, should we really look at this in a new way and maybe make adjustments?
I believe that we should. I believe that, to use an example, I like to use examples from both sides of the fence. So I just want to caveat that because this example is going to come from the right. But several years ago, Giuliani, who was representing then Donald Trump, attacked two workers, two Georgia election workers. He took a video and he claimed that they were, in doing the recount for the election, claimed that they had rigged the results and that they were that he there was this thing in the video that they passed between each other, and he said it was a USB drive. He was told by Georgia's Republican governor, Republican uh, attorney general, that the election was fair, that the women had not done that. The women themselves said they had not done anything wrong, and yet Giuliani persisted with this claim. Now, in the United States, that is not, it's not criminal, but it is civil, meaning he's not going to go to jail for that, right? They had no right to sue him for criminal activity, but they did have a right to sue him for civil activity, meaning that his accusations, despite being told that he was wrong, because he persisted on social media, on YouTube, and the information stayed out there and people believed it. These women were harassed, their lives were upended, their reputations were ruined, their jobs were put in jeopardy, all because they volunteered to help in an election. And by the way, in the court case, it was proven that the thing they passed between them was a ginger mint, which anyone could have seen by blowing up that video. So, yes, I absolutely believe that we have the right to say what we want, we have the right to express ourselves, but there is a limit when we are told that's not right. There is a limit to that because of something I called mass incitement, and then there's also a responsibility to that.
I would say there is because that will blow up somebody's life. Just have it be in the spot like that because everything's so charged.
Yes, that's exactly the problem. And in the book, I talk about a new legal precedent, a new legal term, which I call mass incitement. It's something I created. It's a term I created or coined, however you want to put that. And mass incitement is the concept that when something is said enough times by enough people over a long enough period of time, meaning cumulative passing around of the information, that it will absolutely cause damage. It will absolutely cause harm. And by the way, cumulative does not mean long term. To give you another example, and again, I do try to make everything balanced, but this example is again going to come from the right. During the presidential election, when Donald Trump, during the debate with Kamala Harris, talked about the Haitian immigrants in Ohio eating pets. That didn't just impact those Haitian immigrants, that upended an entire town. And that was also proven false. The governor spoke out, the mayor of the town spoke out. A local businessman who's a Republican spoke out in support of his Haitian employees and was received death threats. Government buildings received death threats. Schools received death threats. People stayed home for days. The town shut down. People lived in complete fear. It's that type of thing, right? Is was Donald Trump allowed to say that? Yes, he was allowed to say that. But the cumulative effect of what was said, and also having it being proven false, was significant damage to these people's lives.
So, why are people so susceptible to misinformation and being emotionally charged?
This is where the psychology kicks in. And I promise I don't talk about things. I try not to talk about things in complex ways, but so I will. I'll hopefully make this simple. But human beings are hardwired for survival. That is our primary thing. We have an automatic system that is hardwired for survival, and part of that automatic system that was imprinted a very, very long time ago is that we are conditioned to fill in missing information. It's part of our need to understand so that we can survive. So we fill in missing information and we look for patterns, and we do this automatically and unconsciously. And so a conspiracy theory, and essentially what happens is to put it in modern terms, our brain, our old brain, the old part of our brain, which we all have, the old part of our brain loves a good story. And what it loves is, frankly, I didn't say this in the book, but I love to say this. It's like a Disney movie. You've got a villain, you have a hero or a heroine, and you've got palace intrigue. And by palace intrigue, I mean just a really juicy story. And our brain will grab onto that automatically and unconsciously, unless there are other inputs that we allow in or other thought processes that we allow in. So it is a very long way of saying that I believe that we are not giving our survival system enough credit for the havoc that it is wreaking in the digital era, because our survival system is also our fight, flight, or freeze. If we feel attacked, we are going to attack back, or we're going to retreat, or we might just freeze in place. But my point in bringing that up is that that fight, flight, or freeze, that automatic system, has two functions in survival. One, like, you know, get rid of the enemy, get rid of the other, the person who's not like us, and surround ourselves, circle the wagons, get into a tribe of people who think like us and who are like us for our protection. And we are seeing this in the United States and frankly worldwide, but we are really seeing this in the United States in a big way. And my belief, and I've talked to other psychologists about this, is that it is the survival system in overdrive.
It would seem that way. I think many of us can feel it. It's that palpable. Let's talk about like when the free speech laws were shaped and how has media, media environment of the past really shaped them as well.
The media environment, if you think back to the 1960s, 70s, 80s, even, modern day media, when I was a child, and I'm going to date myself here, there were four TV stations. Then we got cable, and quickly we had 50. Then all of a sudden we had 100. Now we've got, I can't even. I mean, it's an infinite number of places where we can get news, information, entertainment, whatever. So, but it used to be that on television there were free newscasts. Then at some point you added CNN and Fox News. All right, so that's cable. So maybe you had a total of five or six different newscasts from different stations, different outlets. You had newspapers like the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the Washington Post, USA Today, things like that. And then you had radio. And there was no such thing as Sirius XM. You had AM and FM dial, period. So that's all we had. There were no podcasts, there was no internet, there was none of that. It was a much simpler era. And news traveled more slowly. And I'll tell you, 60 Minutes, which has been around for a very long time on CBS, there was a time in the 1970s, for example, where 60 Minutes said something, then it was heard by the majority of the country all at once. That does not happen anymore. Absolutely not happen anymore. The thing about that, though, is that news traveled more slowly. It was contained to a singular opinion. The media back then and today, I will absolutely tell you, I've worked in corporate communications. I was married to a journalist. I promise you, the media is there are people in the media who are doing their jobs correctly, who are reporting in unbiased ways. We certainly have people who do opinion news, but we also have legitimate journalism happening. And unfortunately, it's all gotten blurred together and it's too confusing for the majority of people who don't have a background like I do, who can tell the difference because of my 30-year career and my ex husband. So, but what I would say is that this has all become mixed together. And in the day, you had, if you read USA Today, you picked up the newspaper, you had multiple stories on the front page, and it was reported in an unbiased way. And then you had opinion, you had the op-ed page, and that had opinion in it. But there were multiple opinions. And because there were so few outlets from which you got information relative to today, you were forced, and I mean forced, if you were reading the newspaper, listening to the news on the radio, or watching it on television, forced to hear multiple stories from a very generic perspective or with both sides represented. That does not happen today. Absolutely not. We have been living in an AI induced bubble since the 1990s, and most people don't go that far back. Ever since Google, right? Ever since we got the internet and we had access to the internet, Google search was born in the 1990s, and Google search used artificial intelligence to take an infinite amount of information and condense it down into one page, right? Literally, the first page of a Google search is about all a human being is willing to look at. So it had to take all that information and figure out exactly what you were looking for and give you that thing in order to save you time. And that has been going on since the 1990s, and it has just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, some people would tell you, oh, it's so great. I'm able to tell my AI exactly what I want, and it gives me exactly the information I want. Yes and no. I mean, that's not great, because what you're doing, or what we are all doing, is feeding ourselves a constant diet of what we think and what we believe. And in that sense, AI has been manipulating our beliefs and our understandings for over 30 years. And if it manipulates what we believe, it is controlling what we think. And that is what's happening right now. That we have lost the ability, the majority of people in the digital era have lost the ability to not just read something from the other side, but be able to even tolerate hearing the other side. And that is part of the survival system that I was talking about earlier, that, us against them, push away the other, circle the wagons, get with your tribe. And so it's really a challenge, because in the old days, when we originally made hate speech laws and other laws regulating speech, news traveled differently, information traveled differently. Today, you can make a comment that goes around the world or is seen by at least millions and millions of people within a matter of seconds. That is that mass incitement that I was talking about earlier. That takes somebody's speech, something they've said, and amplifies it within a nanosecond. And we've not had that before. And our laws have not caught up to that reality.
What is one major point you think we should be aware of?
There is a human being behind every statement that's made. And one of the things that we have lost, in my opinion, is our ability to appreciate other people's humanness. And I developed a three-step method for how to have difficult conversations with other people, whether it's in business, in politics, or at your own kitchen table. And the nucleus, the underlying way of the underlying process for these three steps is curiosity and understanding of other people. So quickly, I will say that the first step is honor thyself. Honor thyself means check your reactions. Like, if you feel yourself getting stressed out, you got to take a deep breath. First of all, it really works. It calms down the body, it distracts the brain, but you want to stop that automatic system from clicking in. And then the second step is honor your neighbor. And the way you honor your neighbor is by recognizing, like, hey, I'm talking to a human being. It doesn't matter if I'm typing to them, or I'm actually face to face with them, or I'm on the phone with them, whatever I'm doing with them, I'm on video. Like, I am speaking with another human being. Instead of assuming malintent, ask them questions, get curious. Hey, I see that really differently than you do. Tell me how you got there. I'd love to know why you feel that way about XYZ. Because once you understand someone, you're going to be less upset with them. When we have empathy for people, we are less likely to judge. And when they tell you their story, right? Step two, they're gonna, they open up and they tell you, well, this is why I think the way I do. This is what happened to me in my life. This is why I believe this. You then, step three is you open up and you tell them your story, because that mutual understanding does not mean we're going to change anybody's minds. This is not about changing minds. It is about simply being able to have a conversation and understand where the other person is coming from. Because everybody, all of us, have had drama and trauma and pain, just like we've all had happiness and joy and excitement. And we all arrived at our belief systems based on everything that's happened to us in our lives prior to this moment. And there's a story behind that. And when we understand that person, it helps us understand their position. And in doing that, it might lead us to a compromise. It might not, but at very least, we don't have this shaming and blaming and ostracizing that is going on, that is not, frankly, it's not in the spirit of what our forefathers created for us.
Oh my goodness, Dr. Massey. I mean, you're such an inspiration. Where can our listeners go to learn more about your work and be part of your community?
Thank you for asking that. The new book is on Amazon. If you're a Kindle subscriber, you can actually get it for free. And if you'd rather read it for free, really for free, you can get it on my website. Quite frankly, the only reason I'm charging for the soft cover book is because there's an expense to have it printed and shipped. So, but if you're someone who likes to read digitally for free, you can go to joannamassey.com or drjoannamassey.com. Either one will get you to the same place, and look under free speech. So that's one place where you can find me. I also I do a lot of commenting on LinkedIn. I still have a day job. I am a corporate director. I serve publicly held companies as chairman of the board, lead director, independent director. So I do have um, like I say, a day job in the business world. But this hate speech, this idea of hate speech, is, in my opinion, bipartisan, and it's my passion. And I guess you could call it my side gig. But I just think it is so, so important for us, all of us.
Well, Dr. Massey, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you, Marianne. Thank you for all that you do for the community, and for promoting different ideas and different philosophies, and helping people.
Well, thank you, Dr. Joanna Massey. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, Free Speech is Not a Free Pass to Spew Hate. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.